Hey, welcome to Lessons for Life. I'm Jim Kunkel, and joining me this evening is Eleni Anastos. Eleni, welcome.
Hello, Jim. It is so good to be here once again with you. And I'm so excited for tonight's topic. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing real great for a Monday. It's the start of a brand new week.
Yes.
And for any transgressions that I might achieve this week, I'm asking for everyone's forgiveness, which is tonight's topic.
Yes. Yes. And it's an important topic for everyone at every age, every level, professionally and personally.
It is. It is. And before we get into this evening's topic, you'll find this topic and much more in Eleni's book, My Reinvented Life, which is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's a bestseller. It's still available. I highly urge everyone to go out and to search it and to get your own copy because you can't have my copy.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful to share. And I was just speaking with someone a little while ago and said, everyone has a story. We all do. And sometimes when you're able to share yours, it just might be what somebody else needs to hear to help them navigate their journey. So let's keep sharing.
Yeah, sharing is so important. Like you said, really, navigating the journey, and life is all about journeys and having a fun time while you have that journey. But when we talk about forgiveness, Eleni, really what comes to my mind is that forgiveness really means different things to different people. But
Mhm.
really, in general terms, it involves an intentional decision to let
Mhm.
go of resentment and anger. And that's so important, not only for your self being, but also for your relationship and others as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I can remember my first encounter with forgiveness or my lesson on forgiveness from my mother and my grandmother. And I think I was in early elementary school, maybe second grade. And something that happened at school, I felt betrayed by a friend, a classmate, and I was really hurt. I was really upset. And I came home and I'm sharing the story to my mother and my grandmother. And I was getting more angry as I was talking about it. And my mom said, "You really should forgive Laura Lenny." And I said, "Why should I forgive her? She's the one that did something wrong. She's the one that hurt me." And she said, "Forgiveness will help stop you from being so angry." Little did I know that I would have countless opportunities to practice that wisdom, that forgiveness can help stop you from being so angry.
I like that. I really love that actually, because when you think about the act of hurt that really impacted you, or whatever offended you, it will always be with you. You're always going to have that. But
Mhm.
working on forgiveness can lessen the acts or the feelings grip on you, and it can help free you from control of that person who harmed you or that situation that you were put into. And sometimes forgiveness may even lead to feelings of understanding, empathy, and compassion for the
Mhm.
person who hurt you. And I've seen many examples of that in my life as well.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I think we both are like minded where this is concerned, especially with forgiveness, because that was one of the lessons that my mom wanted to drill home. It doesn't make Laura's behavior okay. It doesn't excuse or condone what somebody has done to you. But again, it's like taking your power back. It's releasing the hold that it has on you. So to me, forgiveness is the gift you give to yourself, especially if you're the person that's been done wrong, so to speak. It's a gift you can give yourself at any point in time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing the harm that was done to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean, making up with that person who caused
No.
you harm. But forgiveness really brings a kind of peace that allows you to focus on yourself, and it helps you go on with your life. And that's very important.
Oh my gosh, yes, the going on without question. I think fast forward 20, 25 years after that incident in elementary school, and I was very seriously involved. And I remember when I discovered that my significant other was unfaithful. And of course, I was hurt, felt betrayed, and I was, angry. And as soon as I found out, he immediately was begging for forgiveness, apologized profusely, but I was so hurt and I was hanging on to that anger with a vice grip. I mean, every negative emotion was dominating my thoughts. And I wasn't functioning at my own full capacity because, I was caught in that negative loop. And then when I realized, I had the epiphany that, wait a minute, I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who did something wrong. But here I sit in an emotional prison, granted a self-imposed emotional prison at that point, because all I could do was focus on the hurt. And I thought, oh, yes, thank you, Mom. Flashback to the 25 years prior. Forgiveness will help me stop being so angry. And, to your point, it doesn't mean you necessarily get back together or you build a bridge. And I'll forget the day that I said, I forgive you. I forgive you. I wish you the best and I forgive you. He thought that meant we were getting back together. And I said, no, I'm forgiving you so I can take my life back, so I can move on. And now I wished him no harm at that point. Absolutely no ill will. But let's remember, because sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to forgive that person because they did me wrong and they knew it was wrong and it was intentional. That may or may not be true. But the longer we hang on to that pain and that resentment, the lesser of an experience we're going to have living our life. I don't believe we can operate optimally when we're stuck in that negative emotional loop.
Yeah, that is so important to consider, is that if you get stuck in it, it's a feedback loop, and then it can also intensify the emotions, the anger, and then other things can happen. And so, I think really looking at too, talking about what are the benefits of forgiveness. The first thing I think, and kind of coming to what you did, you gave forgiveness, is a healthier relationship. Yes, your relationship was different with your significant other after this event, but you gave forgiveness and you moved on so that your significant other could move on as well. And that's really important, to have a healthier relationship by considering forgiveness as that opportunity to, grant you that avenue or pathway to a healthier relationship with yourself and others as well.
Yeah. And what's more important to you after you've been hurt and you feel all that negativity weighing on you? It's not about giving somebody a free pass when they've betrayed you or hurt you. It's about taking your life back. And to me, that's what matters most, because you can tell someone you forgive them and it doesn't necessarily have an impact on them. And that's okay. If you're the one that's been, quote unquote, done wrong, it's important for you to get your life back and get out of that negative loop.
It so helps you improve your mental health and also your mental state, not only dealing with yourself, with dealing with others. And the other thing I do look at this is that you're going to reduce your stress, your anxiety, and potential hostility that could erupt at any given moment. I've seen people who have been hurt emotionally go into rage and overreaction, and it's a defense mechanism. Yes, it is, but a lot of times is they haven't forgiven others in their life, and sometimes maybe it's even forgiveness to oneself as well. We're humans. We all make mistakes. We also have to practice forgiveness within ourselves as well.
Yes. And when you realize that it is yourself that you're doing harm to by hanging on to it, that's again where you really just have to take the time to look in the mirror. And I think but there's one caveat. Forgiveness isn't equal across all boards. Like I mentioned, this individual I was involved with who begged for my forgiveness. He profusely apologized. That's one scenario. And then I think of, the school assault that was the catalyst for my book, and all those individuals that caused me physical, mental, and emotional harm. When I was constantly focusing on the pain, could not see my way forward. I mean, I believe deep down I would make it through. I just didn't know how. But all of those negative emotions were on that loop, playing over and over in my head. And that bled into every area of my life. And then I thought, but they never apologized. They never showed remorse. how do you forgive someone that doesn't even show remorse? And that would get my anger back up. And again, hearing my mom's words in the back of my mind, forgiveness will help you stop being angry. And that really cemented for me that forgiving them was releasing myself. Honestly, at that point, I didn't care what happened to them. I needed to release myself from that emotional prison. So again, please think of forgiveness as the gift you give to yourself, regardless of whether that other person or entity shows remorse or even asks to be forgiven. You can still choose to forgive and release.
And that will really improve your self-esteem. And also, I think it also is a counteraction against potential symptoms of depression that might creep in, or could intensify into other things that could go into very, very life-changing negative ways. And I think you know what I'm talking about, where people might inflict some self-harm on themselves as well because of what they've gone through, and they're not able to give forgiveness, even if forgiveness is not, if someone has not really kind of said, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I should have never done what I did or said, or what my actions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to circle back, briefly, because you had mentioned that, we all make mistakes in forgiving ourselves. And for me, and I'm sure there's somebody that'll be listening that can relate to this, in my entire life, the most difficult person to forgive of all transgressions has been myself, what I see in the mirror. The old saying of we're always our own harshest critic. And we judge ourselves, and we could go down the path of shoulding on ourselves. I should have known better. I should have made a different decision. I should have figured this out sooner. Who hasn't felt that way? But again, that keeps you stuck in that negative loop where you can't progress, to me, in any area of your life. And it's so important that even if you do make a mistake, even if it is blatant, so what? As you said, you're human. We're going to make mistakes, but having grace with yourself, allowing yourself, the freedom to make a mistake and begin again. To me, we can have infinite beginnings to start over. And what matters most to me is the intentions behind the actions. And I want to share one other story briefly. Several years ago, I wanted to have my condo renovated. And I had hired some construction guys that were directly referred to me, and I was so excited. Well, little did I know, they turned out to be unethical. They caused a lot of damage, cost me tens of thousands of dollars. It was, kind of a nightmare. And I was so angry and frustrated. And I remember sharing this with someone, and a friend of theirs said, well, then why did you hire those guys? Like I knew it was going to happen. And I said, well, you know what? I woke up one day and I asked myself, how can I royally screw myself over? I made a list, and hiring those guys was at the top of the list. Now, of course, that wasn't true, but I was acting like it was, the way I was beating myself up. So again, that forgiveness, examine your intentions behind the actions. Now, unless you genuinely intend to cause yourself difficulty or harm, we have to have some grace with ourselves. We have to be able to release so we can go on, because I think self-forgiveness is vital for us to move forward in any area of life.
Yeah, so true, so true. Earlier at the beginning of the broadcast, you were talking about, school life. And when I think about it, as youth, children and youth, we spend half our time in school, half our time, let's say, with our family. As adults, we spend half our time related to work and around others at work, and then half our time with our families. So
Yes.
what I wanted to kind of talk with you a little bit about is forgiveness in the workplace, and just cover some essential tips, let's say, for related to forgiveness, because the thing that can happen at work is you can have any type of an issue, a conflict, or as they call it, quote unquote, get thrown under the bus by somebody at work. And
Yeah.
really, for professionals, it's super important, especially when you're on a team. You have to be able to practice forgiveness. And it really gives you that opportunity to foster a positive work environment, which increases, the happiness within the team or the company. And it also really kind of transcends into the personal life, the family life, because as much as we want to, if you work in the workforce or even if you're an entrepreneur and you have all these stresses and strains of the ordinary business day going on with you, sometimes you carry that anxiety, that anger, those issues home. And that's something you don't want to thrust onto your family, because now you're going to be asking for a new set of forgiveness related to your family by bringing your work at home. But, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, really being able to communicate. And this can be very difficult, communicating with your colleagues. You have to be able to have that open dialogue. You have to be able to say, listen, we can talk about it. Anything's on the table. Let's talk about it, because that's the best way to resolve any issues, is to talk about it and share your feelings. And communication is so important. Lainey, let me ask you this question. Why you as a trainer working with professionals and entrepreneurs, why is communication so difficult for us?
Well, too often people are going into that judgment zone of they're already in their mind creating the scenario. I'm afraid to broach this topic because they may react in a negative way. But again, we go back to the intentions behind the actions. If you have cultivated an open and honest relationship, then your intentions are to continue to help that relationship grow and be strong. So if you have that intention set, then there isn't any reason to communicate openly and honestly. But too many people, I think, get stuck in that, I'm afraid to bring this up because of how they might react. But if you have honorable intentions, it should release, or at least allay, that fear a little bit.
Yeah, so true, so true. A second tip that I learned during COVID and, working with people like Raquel Packets and others who practice mindfulness techniques, was that how important mindfulness techniques and, just taking that time out to really kind of reflect and think about things over was so important. So really, when you're in that situation, forgiveness is important, but also too, I think for a little bit of a mental rehabilitation for yourself is to practice mindful techniques.
Giving yourself that space, that gap, as well, which I think you're also alluding to here. For example, something might have just happened. You found out somebody did something that could be a direct affront to you. Regardless, it's hurt you, you feel frustrated or maybe even betrayed.
Yes.
And go ahead and write it out. Write out all your feelings, but do not hit the send button. His mom used to say, just sleep on it, honey. Why don't you sleep on it? So get all of those emotions out, because you have the right to all your feelings, whether it's hurt, betrayal, anger, frustration. You have the right to feel it all. Get that out of your system, and then give yourself the space to respond. Because to me, there's a difference between intentional responding and emotional reacting. And I think we all, at the end of the day, especially in the workplace, want it to be an intentional response, not just an emotional reaction.
Yeah. Another tip I have is related to employee assistance programs, EAPs. A lot of employees do not really fully realize when their companies offer, and it's free, a service where, they can actually talk to crisis counselors or counselors. And it's an opportunity for you to talk to a professional if your company offers an EAP. It's all kept confidential, but it's a good way to get an outlet. The other thing I would throw in there, if you don't have an EAP, and this happens to me even today, where I will have professional friends either from my industry or any industry that I might be connected on LinkedIn or whatever social network, where they actually will call me or talk with me and communicate and explain what they're going through, and try to use me, again, not use me in a bad way, really kind of use me to be a way to help them really come to fully understand exactly what they're going through, and also too, what's some of the advice to be able to resolve an issue, but how do I get over this? How can I move forward? And I think it's important too to not only open up to a professional, but also open up to a colleague or a friend that you might have that you can share in confidence this type of a conversation.
Absolutely. And something you mentioned about moving forward, to me, that is pivotal. Because if you're harboring any kind of resentment, anger, or hurt, there is not a snowball's chance in Florida that you're going to be able to move forward in other areas of your life, because that will eventually bleed into those as well. And you're going to stay stuck in that negative loop. And I don't think anybody truly wants to live that way.
No, they definitely don't. One thing that will relate to a story that I had in a previous employment that I had, was a manager, and I actually had a individual who was going through, I would call internal, external training to get elevated within the company. And the goal was, in my mindset's always been, do the best you can to get your boss elevated so that you can become your boss and have others kind of backfill within your position, especially when you're a senior professional. And this is where I learned empathy, to really be empathetic, where the individual did some things to kind of cast shade on me. And what I mean by that is to say, maybe Jim's not the right person for this position. Look what I can do. And that's a way to get a job, but it's not the best way to get the job, because it carries too much baggage with you and potential that it can come back to haunt you. And that was what was happening to this individual, because it was glaringly evident to upper management of what was being attempted. And it was, listen, if you want to get elevated, you've got to go through the trials that everyone else goes through to be able to accelerate their career and go into a new level. But for me, it was like, I understand why it was done. I really do. And also forgiveness came from that. But having that ability to kind of put yourself in their shoes and say, I understand why you did what you did. It's not the right course of action, and view it that way, versus they were trying to get me either moved into another role or get me fired. That takes you down a negative area. So,
right. And honestly, you may never know the true intentions of somebody's actions. And that's okay. We can't wait for that. Like the difference I shared between one individual was begging for my forgiveness, showing remorse, and the other group, denied everything. They never asked for forgiveness. But your choice is still the same of how you're going to move forward. And that to me makes all the difference.
It does. It makes so much difference. The final tip I would have for everyone, of all these other tips and other things that you might find doing research regarding forgiveness or reading in Elaine's chapter in her book, the ultimate thing is to speak to someone at a business, speak to someone at a higher level and upper management. And that's kind of in some cases a last course to take, but sometimes it becomes very necessary that you need to escalate it to a higher level just to address it and to deal with it. So,
yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, especially, in the workplace. And again, when you make it clear that your intentions are going to be to honor the benefits of everyone involved, and especially in a work environment, you want all working relationships to be positive, because we have the ultimate goal of the growth of the company. And that's going to matter most. And you see, Carl has a comment that just came up.
Yeah, any comments or recommendations when issues and topics are in or approaching legal action, court action, lawsuits, juxtaposition of failure from a business perspective, no attempt to crush someone, but it is a reality. Anything to help coping.
When topics or issues are approaching the legal action, yes.
Yeah.
That to me, especially can be a very precarious, a touchy, situation. But if you have it, Carl, you're talking about someone that you may have a direct connection to, like perhaps a colleague of yours that is in the midst of this, or is going to be, in the fire pit, if you will, of that legal action. For me, it's always keeping the doors open. No one wants to feel like they're alone on the battlefield. So if there is a way to still maintain ethics and professionalism, that person knows, and it's not necessarily an ally, but knows that there is someone that's willing to listen to them willing to communicate, willing to lend that ear. Because again, we don't want to be alone on the battlefield, but you also have to be mindful of anything that is said or done, as you had referenced, that if it does involve taking legal action, you also have to be protecting yourself as well with communications.
That's so important. I'm no legal advice or anything like that, but we live in a country that's very litigious, and so many lawsuits can go from all different directions. When you start to approach that level, that's where you have to bring in those legal professionals to be able to kind of help. I do, if I find myself in any type of interesting situations, I journal stuff down so that I have notes and everything like that. I might retain some things. It goes the other way around, like when I look at, companies have retention policies when it comes to emails and things like that, and legal documents and things like that. So when we live in a country like we do, where lawsuits abound, make sure that you do have adequate protection just in case the other side decides to pull the trigger and go after you legally.
And in the workplace, well, actually in any place, I think it's paramount, especially if you care about that relationship, that whatever you say or do, again, going to the intentions behind the actions, that it's very clearly known you're in it for the greater good of the whole. That whatever is said or done, it is to benefit the organization. It's to benefit the greater good of everyone. It's not about, well, we're friends, but I'm not friends with you and I'm going to take you out. It's not playing sides. It's to benefit the greater good of everyone. And if people can appreciate that and respect that, I think you have a much better chance of moving forward.
Yeah, relationships, both business and professional, even family, they're so dynamic. And they can change on a dime. It's just amazing to see things. And what always comes to mind when it comes to relationship changes is I was watching on YouTube regarding people who've made it rich on winning the lottery, and to see family members turn around and sue them immediately for money because they were like, I helped buy the ticket with Jim. I helped buy the ticket, so I should get some of that money. And it's kind of crazy to see, again, how things can happen. But like I say, back to the topic of forgiveness, hopefully those people that had their family bring lawsuits against them, they forgave them. So.
Yes. But again, at the end of I know we're almost at the end of our time together, but I just want to circle back to me, the most important person in the universe that you need to forgive is the one you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that is why I intentionally wore this shirt, as a reminder to please have grace with yourself. And I believe regardless of any decision you've made, choices you've made, paths you've chosen to walk down that have not worked out the way you wanted to, or ended up with some horrific results, go back to your intentions behind the actions. And if you can learn something, that to me, if you can get a gift out of it, you can learn a lesson. I believe with every fiber of my being, so long as you're willing to grow through what you go through, you're going to get to the other side. So please exercise grace and forgive yourself and others.
Oh, that's so good. And as Lainey mentioned, we're kind of coming to the 30-minute mark. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about next week's topic. Next Monday is going to be on creation, which is an amazing chapter in Elaine's book. And I'm really looking forward to that. But Lessons for Life will return next Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So, Elaine, how can everyone who's watching this live and also the replay, how can they get in contact with you? How can they connect with you?
Well, I'm so happy to connect with folks. And you are welcome to reach out to me right here on LinkedIn, Eleni Anastas. I have businesses under my own name. So you can also find me at elenianastas.com. Any of the social media platforms, obviously here at LinkedIn, it's one of the biggest and the best. And I always welcome any questions or comments if you want to have a discussion, because as Jim and I reference quite often, we're here to connect, to cultivate relationships, and we're here every Monday night to be of service. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Perfect. And everyone, you can check me out on LinkedIn. I do a lot of different types of content. So you can either catch me on a live audio or live video recording an episode. And I really appreciate everyone's feedback to Lessons for Life and your support of this broadcast. Eleni and I, this is what drives us. It's what keeps us doing this broadcast, is because of support and the encouragement that you all give us. So,
yes.
All right, Eleni, have a good rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, everybody.